2027, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has guaranteed that Indian economy will become the third largest in his third term, implicitly claiming that he will return to the power for the third term in 2024. And going by the current growth rate of India and other major world economies, India indeed looks to set to become the third largest economy by 2027. But a closer look at the data reveals that there's more to the story than meets the eye. US economy is roughly 7 times India's size currently. It will still be 6 times larger than India's economy in 2027. And China's economy will be 5 times India's economy 4 years from now. But India will only marginally surpass both Germany and Japan, and the two countries is set to overtake. And not to forget that the real story lies in the GDP per capita, where India is far behind the developed countries. So we ask a $1 trillion question: how long will it take India to become a developed country? And what are the growth engines and challenges ahead? Before we get into that, here's what PM Modi had to say.
मैं देशवासियों को ये भी विश्वास दिलाऊंगा कि 2024 के बाद हमारे तीसरे टर्म में देश की विकास यात्रा और तेजी से बढ़ेगी। और मेरे तीसरे कार्यकाल में आप अपने सपने अपनी आंखों के सामने पूरे होते देखेंगे।
So India is set to become the third largest economy in terms of the GDP, but what's the real picture is there something that is missing or not, and how in terms of the GDP per capita are we expected to grow? Let's find out and try to understand what's the expert opinion on all these fronts. Let me welcome on board 3 of our special guests. Firstly, we have Mithali Nikore, founder and economist at Nikore Associates. We have Mahantesh Sabrad, who is an independent market expert, as well as Oze Torres, senior economist, Interactive Brokers. Very good evening to all 3 of you. Mahantesh, let me come to you. PM Modi indicates that once again he's coming back to power in 2024, but keeping the political view aside, what do you believe that India is set to become the third largest economy, and at this growth rate of 6%, is that easily achievable?
That's a given in terms of the overall growth for Indian economy, because Indian economy is now growing pretty much fast. There is momentum that has gathered pace, and we have a set of favorable conditions that are in place for the growth rate to be upwards of 6%, somewhere near the 7% range for a considerable future ahead, irrespective of whether that political change happens or not. That momentum is now being set into pace. Chiefly, I would reckon the biggest momentum that has come about in terms of the Indian economy, in terms of change, is that the overall manufacturing level activity has improved quite considerably. Infrastructure has improved quite a lot, and overall availability in terms of finance has improved quite a bit. All this is causing that momentum for India to grow very fast. So it's an inevitability that in the next few years we should see Indian economy surpassing a few major economies of the world.
So Mahantesh is recoining the fact that it's given that India will be the third largest economy by 2027. But Mithali, coming to you, if we still see the gap between the US and the China, that will be huge. That is still huge in terms of, because China is sitting at a 5 times GDP, US is at a 7 times. But comparing and doing the maths with 6 to 7% of the growth rate on an annual basis, then US will be still at 6 times the size of India GDP, as well as China will be 5 times. How do you see this whole gap between the nations? Because we'll be just keeping or just moving ahead of Germany as well as Japan. Do you believe that going ahead, there's any chance or that this gap could get a shrinkage? How do you see the world economy moving?
So, first of all, thanks a lot for having me on the show. I think, we are getting a little bit too engrossed in these mathematical equations. As an economist, also, I can say that while we, of course, should be worried about the size of the GDP, while we, of course, should be worried about the growth rates, and I think we are doing very well on some of these macro indicators. It's also important to look at how this growth is being distributed in a few ways within the country. The first way in which we have to think about the distribution of the growth is spatially. Is our growth coming from just some few urban sectors like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, or is it being distributed across the country? Not, I mean, I'm saying, like, leave aside rural areas, but even amongst tier 2, 3, 4 cities. So that's the first consideration we have to think about. That is our growth broad based, or is our growth just focused on a few cities? That's the first. Second is, India continues to have amongst the lowest female labor force participation rates globally, and especially amongst emerging economies. And in a recent article, one of my learned colleagues, Dr. Ashwini Deshpande, has also pointed out that India's labor force is actually going to be still lower than China's labor force, despite India's population being larger, because women are not participating in the labor force, and they are not coming out to work. So in such an economy where almost 50% of the skilled and talented women are not participating in economic activities, it becomes, the growth and the sustainability of that growth becomes a question. So I think it's very important that, we've moved towards a model where we have inclusive growth and gender inclusive growth. And the third, aspect that we really need to be thinking about, rather than, whether US or China are bigger, is about the climate, the climate and sustainability question. That, how is it that we are making our growth and our economic progress more sustainable? Are we building more sustainable industries? Are we focusing on the circular economy? And if we focus on these three aspects, then it will be very easy for us to surpass most economies globally, besides possibly the US and China, because US and China do look at these aspects. In fact, China has done really well on sustainable growth and has also done very well on gender inclusive growth. And in fact, their growth has been gender inclusive even in the manufacturing sector. And it has been much greener. They have created urban sponges across the country. So I think these are lessons we can take and really look towards a new era of growth where we are fueled by, gender inclusive green growth.
Jose, coming to you for next one, because Mitali just highlighted all those areas where the disparity lies. How much do you agree with all those points made out there, as well as wanted your take on what should India really do in order to shrink that gap maybe between the GDP per capita, because there a very huge difference lies. So what are your views on the same?
Thanks for having me. Well, I agree with a lot of what was said, and I think an important factor for India's growth going forward is something that PM Modi said when he was here in the US. AI, artificial intelligence, is a big trend, but America India is also a big trend. And following the experience with the pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Western nations have actually been looking to reduce their reliance on Russia and on China. And India is that big economy in the East that can grow their manufacturing significantly. And we have been seeing that. In fact, in the US, we've seen big trends of onshoring, and we're seeing the manufacturing share shift partially from China to India and to the US. So I think that as India becomes more and more of a manufacturing power, I think a lot of those labor force problems become rectified, because with higher income possibilities, more women will want to go out there and start working. And I think that's really what it comes down to for India. to increase its ability to produce goods for the world and services, and to also consume at a high level. I think those factors will continue to fuel India's growth going forward.
Okay, but Mahantesh, coming to you, because now that you feel that it's given that India will be the third largest economy by 2027, how much do you believe that there should be a push from the government side in order to push some of the sectors? And in this growth story, what's your view on which sector could be the leading in terms of growth?
See, let me summarize a bit of what Mitali said and our other participants said. The economic growth is dependent largely upon how the overall capital, resources, and labor are used in terms of the productivity of each one of them. As far as India goes, if I were to evaluate all three, labor productivity, capital productivity, resource productivity, then the problem lies probably with capital productivity. Labor productivity is something like Mitali pointed out in terms of female labor post force participation is something that can be improved upon, and India doesn't have much of a challenge in terms of improving that. But of all these three, the challenge that exists with India is to how to increase the capital productivity, for which size is important. Size of the economy is very much important for capital resources to be made available in terms of finances, in terms of even critical means critical manufacturing elements, or even R&D for that matter. So capital push is what is needed, and for that size is what is needed. So if India were to grow naturally over a period of time in the form, given the momentum that it has already gathered up, that size should be able to address the capital problem ahead. So the government has a crucial role to play here in terms of easing the capital flows for our country. Even today, we have a lot of capital restrictions in place when it comes to making finance available to all parts of the engines of the economic growth. So if there is a bit of liberalization that can be brought in the capital space, and at the same time make perhaps rupee a bit stronger, not necessarily in terms of appreciation, stronger in terms of acceptance, we might see that constraint on capital kind of go away. That's the crucial role that the government will have to play.
Okay, so Mahantesh just highlighted some of the crucial roles that government needs to play, and going ahead 2024 will be a crucial one to see who comes in the power. But Mitali, coming to you, the same question just wanted to put out to you as well, because the question still lies, right? Because we are still a developing country, and what we are comparing with are those developed nations. You did highlight a lot of facts, or rather a lot of points there where the disparity lies. But in order to get near to that, which are some of the areas that the government really needs to focus on? What's your view on that?
I actually feel that, we are at that point where, of course, government is one of the players when it comes to bridging inequalities, but it's not the only player. And what we need now more and more is for philanthropies, corporate social responsibility, and a lot of citizen engagement also to come through, and for people to realize that these inequalities are actually impacting our growth. And that can come only with the realization that actually I don't fully agree with our previous speaker. I agree that capital adequacy is still a problem. But I also feel that labor productivity is also a challenge, because when it comes to skill training, when it comes to gaps in education, the fact that you're only able to access a good quality education or skilling if you're willing to spend. So these kind of issues continue to plague a very large portion of our population. And in order to do that, of course, governments need to continue playing their role in terms of having large government schemes, deliver government services, deliver social services like health, education, etc. But over and above that, the private sector can really play a very constructive role by also becoming the provider of these services and being much more efficient in providing social services. Besides that, I feel like there is a very important need to look at the care economy. There is a lot of care work that women are doing at home. We know that women are doing approximately 5 to 6 hours of care work on average every day, while men do 30 minutes. Now, in such an economy, it becomes very difficult to free up women's time for labor force participation. So we can really look at the care economy as a job driver, as an income generator, and investments in the care economy can really lead to a situation where it becomes a employer of women and also creates economic value, for the economy. And I think the private sector can really drive those investments. So I think the time has come where we stop relying on government schemes solely for social services and develop public-private partnership models and develop private sector delivery models for more efficiency in the social sector and the care sector.
Okay. So that was Mitali's take. But Jose, coming to you, because you just highlighted that you have heard PM Modi while he was back in US, and he was mentioning about the AI, that how disruptive could it be for the Indian markets. What's your view that given the whole setup in India where we are seeing that people are getting more advanced in terms of technology, now every other person is having the access of internet, as well as if we look at some of the sectors that are doing well, how do you believe that AI could play a crucial role, and which are some of the sectors that you believe could be the most advanced one? Maybe by 2027 we will see that AI playing a crucial role in any sectors that you have in mind?
Sure. So I think that memory, gaming, and robotics is going to be huge. I think that the combination of what you said between technological know-how as well as manufacturing capability, though that synergistic combination actually gets to the earlier point of India gaining share from China. While China has a lot of problems going forward with their economic growth, India has a lot of runway. So it's actually an opposite kind of a situation. And I think that with the capital markets excitement that's going on in India, markets at all-time highs, and folks bringing their dollars and euros and other currencies to India, I think AI is a very powerful trend. It gets companies very excited, more efficient, gets people excited as well. And I think that's where India has fallen behind a little bit in the past few years, has been on the efficiency side. So I think gaining those efficiencies and the excitement around AI and more people working, I think that those are going to be very positive trends for the Indian economy in the next decade or so.
With this, it's time to wrap this discussion. Thank you so much, Mitali, Mantesh, as well as Jose, for joining us today on ET Now with this discussion. So that was all about India's dream to become third largest economy by 2027. A majority of our experts do believe that it is given in the current scenario of 6 to 7% of the growth rate that India is having. It is given that India will be the third largest economy, surpassing the GDP of Japan as well as Germany. But other than that, we just discussed how the income gap disparity needs to shrink going ahead.